Hello, welcome to an introduction to assistive technology and augmentative and alternative communication. We'll be talking about a lot of tools for communication and access. To get these slides today, you can go to http://bit.ly/4F capital H capital B R M capital U. Before we get started, I want to introduce myself. I am Laura Begley, one of the 4 assistive technology consultants here at Wayne Risa. There's also Barry Ahern, Pamela Cunningham, and Amber Wade. Barry and I are both speech pathologists by trade, and so we tend to dabble more in the augmentative and alternative communication side of things, while Pam and Amber are both teachers by trade, and they also have a wealth of knowledge that could be provided. So together we make up the Wayne Assistive Technology team, or called WAT by some, right? And we provide the county with various assistive technology supports for students who have a moderate to severe disability. We try to keep a variety of resources available to everyone on our website. If you look at the website and you navigate down towards info and resources, you'll find a variety of things there, such as our guidelines and guidance documents for assistive tech, which we have some information there about how to do an assessment, how to write AT into an IEP, as well as some regional and state guidelines pertaining to assistive technology. On our website, under Info and Resources, we also have some tools and supports for decision making, various accessibility resources, some references, and some information about UDL. You'll also find there our core vocabulary boards and the various translated communication boards, which we'll get into a little bit later. So WAT, or the Wayne Assistive Technology team, we do lots of different things. Our primary focus is on assistive technology consultations and our lending library. So we provide any AT tools to students who have a moderate to severe disability, as long as they are enrolled in a Wayne County public school system, or one of our participating PSAs. So sometimes we work with individuals who are in that early on birth to 3 stage, all the way up through students who are 26 years old, as long as they continue to be an enrolled student. People can request a consultation on our website, and then one of the 4 of us would walk you through kind of some of that brainstorming stuff around what assistive technology tools or supports might benefit a child. And we also offer just straight access to our lending library. So if you as a professional know what you would like to borrow for your student, you can make that request there. Both of those are completed through an online request system that you do need to make a free account for, but once you have an account, you just log in and then you can fill out the different requests for WAT support. And then there we can completely interface with you through that system. Additionally, we provide a variety of professional development and training, with most of it, of course, being around assistive technology, but also a lot on augmentative and alternative communication systems, universal design for learning, accessible education materials, as well as general accessibility. This year, I'm really excited about a lot of the courses that we will be offering, which I'll highlight at the end of today. Additionally, we have a Make and Take Resource Center. Our Make and Take Resource Center is available to staff who are supporting students with a moderate to severe disability. There you'll have access to a poster printer, color copiers, Velcro, laminators, board maker, lesson picks, a binding machine, all of those little metal rings and hole punches, and, right? We hope to increase what is available in our Make and Take Resource Center as we're moving to a new space, and we'll have a little bit larger sized space that people could come and work in, but stay tuned for what else might be available. But to come to our Make and Take, we do ask that you sign up online by going to risa.net, navigating to the Assistive Technology page, and simply using that online scheduler there. That will let you know when the space is just open and available. But if you have a different day or time in mind don't hesitate to email us at wattsupport@risa.net or give us a call at 734-334-1701 to inquire about that other time to come and visit. So, what is assistive technology, or AT? Assistive technology is an umbrella term that includes any item, piece of equipment, software, or product that is used to increase, maintain, and/or improve the functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. It's written in the law. It first showed up with the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, right? And Section 504 is a civil rights law. It protects students from disability discrimination and ensures equal access to learning opportunities. For many students, equal access might mean accommodations that include assistive tech. Unlike IDEA, this applies more broadly to any federally funded program, so we often see Section 504 in K-12 schools as well as higher education. Now, IDEA from 2004 makes it very clear that every IEP team must consider whether a student needs assistive technology in order to access their education. IDEA doesn't just cover devices, it also includes the services and training that are needed to make sure those devices are effective. The focus is always on helping the student access the general curriculum and participate in the least restrictive environment. Here in Michigan, our state rules for special education, or Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education, reinforce and extend the law from IDEA. MARS requires that IEP teams to consider AT and make sure that it's provided when necessary. Additionally, there's an emphasis on timely access, ensuring that students don't have to wait months and months for technology that they need to participate fully in the school. In January of 2024, the U.S. Department of Education, specifically the Office of Special Education Programs, OSEP, together with the Office of Educational Technology, released a critical guidance package to clarify legal requirements and address widespread misunderstandings regarding assistive technology under IDEA. This was really big for us in our field, as this was kind of the biggest statement publicly made around assistive technology supporting its use for our students. This release included two main components. First, it was a Dear Colleague letter that was signed by key assistant secretaries that announces the release of the guidance. Additionally, a detailed guidance document titled Myths and Facts Surrounding Assistive Technology Devices and Services. This document was intended to help a broader audience, including parents, educators, administrators, service providers, as well as state agencies, to understand IDEA's assistive technology requirements, dispel some common misconceptions, and illustrate how assistive technology could be implemented across Parts B and C of IDEA. The Office of Special Education Programs debunks 28 different myths, pairing each with a clear, legally grounded fact to reinforce proper practice. One of the myths that they highlight is that AT is optional if there's no funding. That is not at all true, and if the IEP team determines that AT is necessary to provide FAPE, the local educational agency must fully fund and provide those assistive technology devices and services. Another sample myth that they provide is that providing an assistive technology device alone meets the legal requirements. Again, that is not true, as an AT device alone does not include the AT service component, such as evaluation, training, and maintenance, which are equally required to ensure effective use of that device. This guidance is critical as it reinforces legal obligations under IDEA. It helps ensure that AT is thoughtfully integrated into every relevant IEP, reminds educators and administrators that AT includes not only devices, but also necessary services and supports, and it promotes equitable access to education by ensuring consistent, accurate AT implementation. Ultimately, this guidance helps turn intent into action, making education more accessible and inclusive for students with disabilities. Across our various federal and state laws, AT is highlighted in a variety of ways. schools have a legal obligation to make sure that students not only have access to the tools that they need, but also the services, training, and materials that make those tools effective. It's not just about having the devices available, it's about timely access, knowledgeable teams, and ensuring that no student is left out or discriminated against because they rely on assistive technology. So, IDEA clearly defines an assistive technology device as any item, piece of equipment, or product system, whether acquired commercially off the shelf, modified, or customized, that is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of a child with a disability. This term does not include medical devices that are surgically implanted or the replacement of those devices. There's a variety of types of assistive technology out there, and the spectrum that we kind of reference is low tech or no tech to mid tech all the way up through high tech devices. I'll get into some of those specifics now. When we're thinking about no or low tech devices, these could be as simple as a pencil grip. The difference between a pencil grip just being generically used by any students and a pencil grip being considered assistive technology requiring documentation in the IEP is that if the child needs to utilize the pencil grip to increase, maintain, or improve their capabilities so that they can access the same curriculum as their peers. The key word there being need, right? So if a child needs a certain type of pencil grip to maintain a tripod grasp on the pencil or to write legibly, that must be written and documented in that student's IEP. Other types of no or low tech tools could be various manipulatives, positioning aids such as slant boards, visual schedules, some simple communication boards, or highlighter tape, right? All of these are very low tech, but they could be very crucial to the success of one student. Some of the mid-tech technologies, assistive technologies that are out there are things like electronic screen magnifiers, voice amplification systems, adapted keyboards or mice, switch-adapted toys, portable word processors, talking dictionaries, and even some static communication devices. All of these require a little bit more training, right, for full use, to be fully appropriate and functional for that individual with a disability. It has a little bit more battery power there as well. And sometimes there's some stigma that comes along with using this. So we want to make sure that everyone on the team and in that student's environment is aware of what they're doing and kind of the why behind it to ensure that they have access and they're not kind of put aside or looked down upon for using a different type of tool. The whole purpose is, again, so that that individual with a disability can do what their peers are doing. And we want to make sure that that's seen as an equal opportunity type situation and not as, oh, look, they're different, right? Now, high-tech types of assistive technology are things like a large screen computer, some iPads can be considered high-tech AT, software, various software to support academics, some of those extensions that are out there as well, some dynamic communication devices, as well as some complex computer access software and devices. Some of the computers that we use and support students with have head tracking ability. Some use eye gaze to completely scan and access the device, as well as switch scanning, which is a much more complex system, but is great for those students who might have a complex body. These high-tech devices all require a lot of training and support to ensure that they're utilized to their highest potential and they're supporting that individual who needs them, right? We want to make sure that that student or child using these high-tech devices has been trained, as well as their family or guardians as appropriate. We also want to make sure that their whole school team has been trained and that they're aware of what tools need to be put in place, when, and how. When thinking about all of these assistive technology tools, we really have to be kind of aware of that shiny effect. Just because something is new or shiny, exciting to you, doesn't mean that it's going to be the right tool for that student. So I mentioned eye gaze computers, right? And that sounds so neat, right? To be able to control the whole computer with your eyes. Well, that is a very, very cool tool, and it's very neat to experience. It's not necessarily the right tool for all students. Sometimes I've worked with students who maybe have an astigmas in their eye, or their eyelids don't open all the way, or their glasses are too thick to get a proper reading, right? That, that's just not the right tool for them. So we really need to think about the student first and not necessarily the tool. Kind of along the same line, we need to be cautious with the comfy effect, right? So just because we're comfortable with some type of tool doesn't mean that it's going to be the right fit, again, for that student. Personally, I am an Apple iOS iPhone gal, and I'm very comfortable within that iOS world, right? But if I'm working with a school team or with a student that are more Google-based or Android-based users, I have to ensure that my own bias towards ISO or iOS devices is not perceived or comes across as like kind of demanding around what that might be. That being said, most tools or most applications out there on the market that are supportive of assistive technology needs generally are programmed for an iOS device, but there are a variety of tools out there for the other ones. So it's just one of those things to kind of be aware of. If I like a certain program, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the right program for that student or for someone else. Within the definition of assistive technology through IDEA, it also talks about AT services. Assistive technology service means any service that directly assists a child with a disability in the selection, acquisition, or use of that AT device. These services could be the evaluation of a need, right? Including functional evaluation of the child in their customary environment. A service could be purchasing, leasing, or otherwise providing the various device to children with disabilities. It could be selecting, designing, fitting, customizing, adapting, applying, maintaining, repairing, or replacing the device. For example, with a lot of the augmentative and alternative communication devices out there, we need to customize it a little bit so that way the primary names in that human's life are going to be on their device so they can quickly say them or shout for their mom or their brother or their dog, where they can request their favorite foods, right? All of that is programming is kind of considered one of those AT services. Another service is coordinating and using other therapies and interventions or services with AT devices so that they're all kind of doing the same thing and that everyone is on the same page. The last main service is that training or technical assistance. And again, we want to make sure that the child with a disability has been fully trained as appropriate and or that child's family or their guardians. Additionally, we want to make sure that all of the professionals who are working with that child or their employers or other individuals who might work with them or are substantially involved have received training around the AT tools that human needs to be successful in accessing their environment, right? We cannot have true assistive technology implementation without both AT services and devices. There's nothing that we can put in place to just make someone successful using assistive technology. Just like me picking up a basketball does not make me a pro basketball player, athlete, right? Nor does giving a student an augmentative and alternative communication device make them a fully functional communicator, right? We need to teach them and show them. We need to support them in their learning of using this tool to be successful in accessing their environment. There's a lot of abandonment that occurs with various assistive technology tools because people often forget about the service side of things and ensuring that the training and the supports are put in place so that the whole team and the other individuals in that child's life are kind of aware and supportive of whatever tools are put in place. As we know, IDEA mandates that assistive technology be considered at every single IEP for each and every student, right? It also has to be documented throughout the IEP. Here in Wayne County, many of our schools use MyStar, for their IEP systems, and this might be kind of what it looks like on that first page under special factors. Here it says the IEP team must consider the following for the student. Check boxes to indicate consideration, right? So communication needs of the student, check. The need of assistive technology devices and services for the student, check. This alone is not enough to kind of honor the idea behind IDEA. We should be having a conversation with the family or with the team sitting there at the table around what tools and services that student might benefit from to access their curriculum. This conversation can be as short as like 1 minute, right? Saying, yeah, Johnny uses a pencil grip. We have it available to him at all times. If it gets lost, the teacher has a backup, right? Or it could be much more complex, as like we're working on a mounting system for the eye gaze device, and so is doing the training, so is doing the charging, some of that other stuff and how they access their various components throughout the IEP, right? But this should not dominate the whole conversation around the IEP, but it is something that we need to make sure we're actually talking about during that meeting. Assistive technology consideration is a purposeful process, right? And it involves a collaborative decision-making process. I cannot reiterate enough that this really should be done as a team. Personally, as an SLP, I come to the table with a language lens, right? Whereas my OT friends would come to the table with more of an access perspective, and the teachers would come more so with a curriculum, lesson planning perspective. And all of that together, we can figure out what is going to be best for that student. And trying to identify maybe, well, this works or this doesn't work, or I need this or that, and kind of balancing that out to ensure that like the student has the best possible kind of system put in place for them. As a team, we should review everything that's kind of already there about that person and collectively add additional information, right, as we need to ensure that we're deciding if they need AT or not, and if they don't need AT, that we're documenting that somewhere too. A couple of years ago, some of the assistive technology professionals, such as myself, from around the state of Michigan got together, and with an aim of being consistent across the state, we came up with this flow chart for the AT consideration process, right? So is the student making adequate progress on IEP goals in the general curriculum with the current supports? Yes, or maybe no, right? If you follow this QR code here or this bit.ly, so bit.ly/Michigan AT consideration, it will take you straight to this document. The goal of this document was that it could be printed on a legal sheet of paper, so like 11 by 17, and left in the IEP room, right? So that way, as you're having that conversation around consideration of assistive technology, you can generally say that, like, if you walk through this, you're pretty good to go, right? So yes, that student needs yes, that student is making adequate progress, right? Just follow the flow chart. So is the student progressing without AT? Make sure you document that on the FAPE page. Is the student making progress with AT? Then continue on and follow this, right? Where is it being documented throughout the IEP? And then make sure you're having all of the consideration around the rest of the team, what new information, etc., that I just went over. So is the student not making progress or maybe making progress, right? There's a variety of areas that that student might benefit from additional support in. So here, right, these are a variety of instructional tasks where students may benefit from different types of AT tools. So writing and written composition, spelling, reading, math, organizational skills, hearing and listening, oral communication or language, various activities of daily living, recreation and leisure, pre-vocational and vocational, seating and positioning, and mobility, right? So it's not just one specific area, right? Sometimes when we're thinking about assistive technology, our brain gets hyper-focused on augmentative and alternative communication systems, or it gets hyper-focused on an extension such as read and write through text help and now Everway, right? To support students with understanding the written text that is there. But really, there's various assistive technology tools that could support any of these areas for a student with a disability. When you contact WAT or the Wayne Assistive Technology team for a consultation, we generally walk you through the SET framework. The SET framework is a structured conversation where it helps us really focus on who the student is and not on the desired tool. So if you go to our website, you'll find some resources there to help walk you through the SET and kind of what each area could look at and what you need. So S standing for student, we really want to consider the student's abilities, their special needs. Sometimes it's really even important here to list their peer relationships or even some of their special interests, right? Are they really, really into Minions, and are they really, really into something else? If we incorporate their interest into this tool, is it going to help get their buy-in? Then we want to think about the environment that that student is in. What type of support is available to them? What are the expectations in that environment? And what other tools are already there? What are the attitudes of the staff, family, or peers in that space? And how are we ensuring that we're supporting them there? And then we need to identify what is that task, right? So going back to those instructional tasks where we want the student to improve, right, their access to their curriculum, right? So what is naturally occurring? What are the expectations? What are their IEP goals? What are the other students doing, right? All of this together can kind of give us an idea of what may be features of a tool that that student might need. For example, we need something that has voice output, or we need something that they can access with a simple finger touch or not a lot of strength, or maybe they can't use a whole keyboard because of their range of motion. So we need something that is in front of them and maybe they only have to move, say, 6 inches for, right? So thinking about all of those different features that might benefit your student. So we really want to do, as much as we can, some out-of-the-box thinking here, right? Think about what's available already, what's benefiting them, what's not benefiting them, and we can come up with some assistive technology solutions. It's my job, and Barry and Pam and Amber, right, our AT professionals' job to kind of know what the tools are on the market and help match those tools to whatever features that you guys come up with as an IEP team. I'm not going to know the student that we're consulting about, but you are. You guys are going to be the experts on that student, and I'll be the expert on the AT tools. And hopefully we can find something in the middle that will benefit them. After the consideration, we want to put some AT in place, right? So then we have our implementation, right? As we're thinking about implementation, it's important to remember that everything is trial and error when it comes to assistive technology. There's no one thing that I'm going to say, yes, absolutely, this is going to be the perfect tool, set up exactly the way they need it the very first time I put it in place, right? We're going to have to make some adjustments. We might need to even change the whole tool. And we can do this through, tracking the data, following feedback from the student and from the IEP team. This is a dynamic process, right, that will reflect the students' changing needs, the changes in their environment and their strengths. And we also need to kind of monitor and think about the changes in technology as that's changing every single day. So if we keep that student at the center of our focus, right, every time we kind of consider assistive technology and then we choose and trial AT and then implement it and we're monitoring it, right, we ask ourselves, is it working? Right? Is it still working? Yes, right? Is it working for the problem that we wanted to fix or support, right? So what activity or task is difficult for that student to do? And then why is that activity or task difficult? And then what are we going to do about it? Do we need to adjust the AT, or are things working well? This is an ongoing cycle that the team should be constantly kind of aware of. And talking to each other about, so that way that student is getting the full range of supports that they might need. Now when it comes to documentation, if AT is determined that it's needed, right, we want to document that throughout the IEP without using specific name brands. Companies change names all the time. For example, Text Help, which was the original producer of Read and Write for Google, or maybe not even the original, is now owned by a company called Everway, right? So I'm not going to write in the IEP that Everway products of read and write, right? Because who knows? That might change again in the near future. We never know. So we want to kind of use those features that we identified from that set framework conversation and write those into the IEP. And we could do that in various parts like the PLAF, supplementary aids and services. We could write it on the transition plan, in the assessments or goals and objectives, or even on the FAPE page. So, for example, if I have an IEP for a student that needs to use an augmentative and alternative communication system, and we put in place an iPad with TD Snap, I'm probably going to write something like a portable touchscreen device with a core-based robust communication program. I could also then indicate that for additional information, please see an implementation plan, right? And an implementation plan can be something very similar to like a behavior intervention plan. This is a living and breathing document that the whole team can contribute to, where we can identify who's responsible for charging the device, who's responsible for training, etc., right? And put more specifics there. So there I could indicate that the student is using TD Snap on an iPad with maybe it's an iPad 10.2 size screen with Motor Plan 66 page set with blank customizations, right? Such grid margins, etc., because we want to be able to replicate whatever it is that student currently has and is being successful with if this device was to break, right? We want it to essentially be a guidebook for what tools we need to put in place as things needed to be replaced. There's a couple of other examples here too. So like a chatterbox might be a portable voice amplification device, or that read and write, again, like I mentioned, might be a text prediction based software. So where do we want kind of get our guidance from? Because IDEA and some of those other laws don't go as specific as all of this, right? So we get our guidance from what we call QUIET, which is the Quality Indicators for Assistive Technology. QUIET is a national grassroots group that developed a set of widely acceptable quality indicators and tools to help educators, service providers, consumers, and policymakers ensure that students with disabilities receive high-quality assistive technology services. This initiative began in the summer of 1998. The QUIET leadership team was formed by a group of AT service providers who met to create a professional guideline for improving the quality and consistency of AT delivery, with a general goal of establishing standards for K-12 and post-secondary environments. QUIET maintains a listserv that you could join as well on their website to get updates and be able to pose questions around some challenging assistive technology situations. Before we get into some of these indicators, QUIET does have some basic assumptions that every person should believe when it comes to assistive technology. So it's essential that all AT services developed and delivered by your state or district are legally correct according to the mandates and expectations of the federal and state laws that are aligned to your district policies. We also believe that AT efforts at all stages involve ongoing collaborative work by teams which include families and caregivers, school personnel, and other individuals and service agencies. Team members involved in the AT processes are responsible for following the code of ethics for their specific profession. So for me, that would be ensuring that I'm following the ASHA standards, ASHA ethical standards, right, as a speech and language pathologist. So QUIET has a variety of indicators and matrices, right? And these are all free on their website, qiat.org. They have identified 8 different areas that are important to the development and delivery of AT services. These include consideration of AT needs, assessment of assistive technology needs, AT in the IEP, AT implementation, evaluation of effectiveness of AT, AT in transition, administrative support for AT, as well as AT professional development. Personally, over the years, I found that 7th indicator, administrative support for AT, can be really helpful in advocating to some of your building administrators and supervisors for support with some of this implementation and ensuring that the whole team gets the proper training and the services are there for that student. Each of these areas was developed by different focus groups and then later validated through research. Each area has a variety of intent statements that then further explain each indicator, and they additionally include a list of common errors that people make when it comes to that. Recently, Quiet added a set of self-assessment matrices for all of the quality indicators as well. Again, all of this information is free and available on the quiet.org website, as they want this to be no barrier type situation, right? They just want everyone to have access. If you were to navigate to quiet.org and kind of went to indicator number 4, AT implementation, this is what you would find at the top of the page. You'll see there that you can download this as a PDF or as a Word document, and then it gets into the indicator statements, right? So this reads that assistive technology implementation pertains to the ways that assistive technology devices and services, as included in the IEP, including goals, objectives, related services, supplementary aids and services, and accommodations or modifications, are delivered and integrated into the student's educational program. Assistive technology implementation involves people working together to support the student using AT to accomplish expected tasks necessary for active participation and progress in customary educational environments. So the first indicator here that they state is that assistive technology implementation proceeds according to a collaboratively developed plan. So this is kind of like that AT implementation plan that I referenced when talking about documenting AT into the IEP. And the intent of this statement is that following the IEP development, all of those who are involved in implementation of the work together then develop a written action plan that provides detailed information about how the assistive technology will be used in specific educational settings, what will be done, and who will do it. For example, a robust AAC device that is high-tech, right, like an iPad with that TD Snap, is a wonderful, wonderful tool in some environments. It's not ideal if that student is, say, taking a swim class or playing outside on the playground, right? While we do want that student to have access to their robust communication tool, we also want to have some backups that are appropriate to be used in some of those other environments. Maybe we have a low-tech version printed on some waterproof, tear-proof paper, or maybe we have some signs or gestures that are commonly utilized to communicate some basic needs, because as we think about communication, it is a whole system, right? We also want to document here is like who's responsible for providing the training, who needs training, and when is it provided, what are the questions, right? If we make changes, say we adjust the grid margin factor, or we're changing the color, or we're changing pronunciations, where is that backup file saved, and why were those changes made, right? We want to include some of the why in there, so that way whoever is working with that student in the future has a bit of that historic perspective, as they might want to make changes back to how it was, but then if they see that, like, oh, okay, that's a me issue and not a student issue type situation. We also want to indicate here who's charging it, who's responsible for getting it out in front of the student and available to them each day. Is this going home with the student? What are the expectations while the student is home with this assistive technology? So kind of thinking about all of it. If we were to continue on this fourth indicator, AT implementation, and kind of scroll down the page, you would see additional indicator statements as well as those common errors at the bottom of the page, with each indicator having that intent where it kind of explains a little bit further of what they meant by the statement. So again, assistive technology is that giant umbrella term, right? It includes a lot of tools and various things that are out there. And I want to go a little bit more into augmentative and alternative communication, as this is one of the large components of AT, and it probably one of the largest that we at the Wayne Assistive Technology team kind of deal with and provide to our students across Wayne County at this time. So AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. These devices can be used to augment or replace verbal speech, right? So they can support or replace our verbal speech. AAC is just a tool in the toolbox to assist in communicating for a variety of purposes. The use of AAC is not the goal. Communication is the goal, and we all communicate, right? So going back to that idea around assistive technology and identifying the tasks that we want someone to have access to so that they can maintain, improve their functional capabilities so that way they're integrating and doing the same thing as their peers, right? Their peers are communicating. We simply want to give a student access to communicate robustly within that environment with their peers, right? We don't necessarily require that they're using AAC or that specific high-tech AAC device to communicate for those purposes, right? Or for all purposes. It's important to remember that we're all multimodal communicators. So some of us communicate with a lot of eye rolls or facial expressions. Some of us use a lot of gestures to really elaborate on certain points that we're using. Right now, I'm choosing to use my verbal speech to talk to all of you, but I could also write out all of this information through typing, right? And I could communicate with you in that form. So it's important to respect how your student or learner chooses to communicate. Acknowledge what you've heard or seen them communicate, right? And show them how they could communicate using a new form, right? So if you are trying to get them to utilize a high-tech communication system or a robust AAC system, acknowledge that you see, oh, I see that you want goldfish. Here's another way you could say that, right? Here's another example. ASHA back in 2010, so ASHA is the American Speech Language Hearing Association, and it is the kind of governing body for speech language pathologists as well as audiologists in our country. So ASHA said that there are 0 prerequisites to put in place a AAC system, right? So the research dispelled the notion that like some of our early communicators must show certain cognitive abilities before being given access to language, right? They don't need to prove to me that they can match picture to picture or understand receptively what some of these pictures mean before I give them access to words, right? If you think about natural language development with an infant, all children are spoken to in the language that they're anticipated to learn someday, right? And we're using probably our full range of language, right? Maybe we simplify it a little bit, but for the most part, we use a variety of words with children. Not that they necessarily know what they all mean, but they start to learn what they mean through practice and play and use and watching those around them communicate, right? So that's what I meant by showing and modeling the use of those other devices while still honoring whatever form that they've chosen to communicate in. All of these different AAC systems that are out there can use core vocabulary. Core vocabulary is kind of a big term out there in the market. Core words are anywhere from like 50 to 400 words, depending on the size of your lexicon, that make up most of what we say in a typical conversation and in typical writing, right? And so these 50 to 400 words, right, account for 80% of the words that you use every single day. So when we're planning for an augmentative or alternative communication system and we're trying to program in some of the words, we really want to make sure that there's a lot of core vocabulary present because these are the words that we're going to get the most bang for our buck with, right? Like, I want that. It goes here. You stop, right? There's so many different things like my turn. All of those are considered to be core words. and we can fully communicate our intent and meaning with those just by using some of those core words. The other chunk of our vocabulary is called fringe vocabulary, and these are the thousands upon thousands of other words that kind of add the fun to our language, right? So if I was to say pterodactyl, right, that kind of comes out of nowhere, but it's a fun word thrown in there to add some description and some context to what it is we're talking about. It's not easy to predict what fringe each individual might need, right? So personally, I have my son's names at home, my husband, my dog, right? I need to say all of those words on a regular basis. But if you didn't know me or know my home life, you wouldn't know what words to program in for that situation. Here in Wayne County, we rolled out the Wayne County Core Vocabulary Board. It originally started back in 2014, and then we updated it to these 108 words around 2018, 19 maybe, I want to say. This is just a tool that is out there across the county with kind of the hopes that it's a Tier 1 support. So that way, as a student transitions from building to building, as we all know they do, and the student transitions from teacher to teacher, and a student transitions possibly even from district to district, they're going to have access to something that is similar to what they've seen in the past, right? So myself, Laura, if I move from school A to school B, and I see a whole different symbol set and a whole different organization of words, it's like starting over with learning a language, right? Whereas if I see something similar that's there, I'm going to be aware, a little bit more aware that I can communicate with you and we're going to have an understanding of each other. So if you look at this board here, we have all of those other core words that I was saying a second ago, right? So my turn, your turn, do it, right? I want that. And using these core words combined with context cues in our environment, we can communicate a lot. This does not give access to robust language, right? So that's why I'm just saying it's a Tier 1 support. This is not something that a student has to master before we give them access to something more robust. With those robust systems, it allows us to communicate for many more purposes, such as like whining or joking around, right? And there's so many different reasons that we communicate, such as flirting or disagreeing or greeting people, expressing their opinions, sharing their information, right? Telling on someone, tattling, right? That's a huge aspect of being a kid, right? Is tattling on their brothers. We need a lot of different words to communicate for all of these purposes. And we want to make sure that as educators, we're teaching and modeling all of these different purposes to our students so that they're kind of aware of the many reasons that they could communicate and the various ways that they could utilize their tool to communicate for those different purposes, right? Because when we choose to communicate, it's a way of sharing ourselves with the world, right? And the way that I combine words gives you an idea of kind of who I am as a human. As educators, it can be easy to fall into that focusing on just requesting wants and needs and answering explicit questions kind of side of things, which is not full language when we're really thinking about it, right? That's very limiting for our students. You're not teaching them how to disagree with you. You're not teaching them how to gossip or maybe share a joke or tell a story, right? We're not teaching them to initiate a conversational interaction, which are all very, very, very important components to communication. Lance McLemore, who is an adult AAC user, was a keynote at Talking AAC back in 2018. And during his presentation, he said, "If you don't have communication, in effect, you are invisible. It's like being somewhere between alive and dead. Communication seems to be an essential part of being human." And with that humanness in mind, I thought I would talk a little bit about the Communication Bill of Rights. The third edition for the Communication Bill of Rights was released earlier this year in 2025, and it was created by the American Speech Language Hearing Association, so ASHA, along with the National Joint Committee for Persons with Disabilities. The Communication Bill of Rights outlines some human rights that are essential for communication and for all humans, right? So there's the right to dignity and respect in all interactions, the right to meaningful communication that is culturally and linguistically appropriate. We want to make sure that they have access to certain words that are important in their culture or foods, right? We want to make sure that they have the right to be addressed directly and not spoken for or talked about as if not there. It's a pet peeve of mine when someone is talking about a student when they're sitting there, or if, say, a doctor comes and talks to me when my son is sitting there with me. It's like, no, talk to my son, right? He has his own opinions and he's his own person. And yes, I want to support him and we're going to talk together, but we're going to include him in that conversation. All humans also have a right to receive a response to all communication, even when their desired outcome is not possible. So when my 5-year-old is throwing a tantrum for a popsicle, right, it's not possible right now, but he deserves to be heard and communicated with, even though that's not a possible outcome. So with that idea in mind, we're not going to remove an AAC device from a student just because they keep repeating the word ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. We don't know that they're requesting it. We don't know if they're just talking about it, or maybe they really just like the sound of that word. We can teach the social pragmatic use of the language and teach them when it's appropriate to say that, hey, we're not talking about ice cream right now. I hear you saying ice cream. That's not a possibility right now. Like, we're doing XYZ, right? We want to make sure that all individuals have the right to participate across settings as full communication partners, right? That we're giving them access to that robust language and literacy skills that are needed. That all individuals have the right to interact socially and build and keep relationships. They have the right to be given and to understand information about objects, actions, events, and people, right? We should be making sure that we're teaching every student, right, what these different words might mean, and everything else that's kind of out there around language. All individuals have the right to ask for or refuse objects, actions, events, and people. When we give them the opportunity to refuse or reject or say no, it gives them a sense of power so that they can advocate for themselves in their own life, right? It's something that we don't often teach as educators because we have a certain lesson plan or objectives that we're trying to meet throughout the day. But try to find times throughout the day that it's appropriate to teach a student to say no, or if they do say no, that you honor and respect that, to show them that your words do have power and your words give you ownership over your day and your life, right? All people have the right to express preferences and feelings and make comments and share their opinions, whether or not you want to hear it, right? All people have the right to make choices from meaningful options. They have the right to access services and supports for communication across their entire lifespan. And they have the right to individualized working AAC systems and other AT at all times, right? We want to make sure that it's put in place and that they have access to it at all times. One of the most important things for me when it comes to augmentative and alternative communication is that we're aiming for connection over compliance. With communication, we really want to focus on connection and connecting with other people around us and showing who we are and what our preferences are, what our opinions are, what we like, right? Instead of compliance. And it's easy to fall into that compliance realm because we want to teach them, like, say, I want coffee, right? Now copy after me. I say, I want coffee. But if I'm having a student say what I'm telling them to say every single time, then they're just becoming an echo of what I want to say at that point, right? Or what I think they should say, which is not necessarily their own autonomous style of communication. Maybe they want to say, give me coffee instead of I want coffee, right? And they have every right to change that inflection and change their tone and change the way that they're communicating. When we aim for that connection, we really are trying to make sure that they're engaged in the interaction, that they are using the words that they have access to fully communicate. So sometimes we can aim for asking questions like, oh, tell me what you know about XYZ, or just really giving them a long expectant pause to see what they might say or what they might come up with on their own. If you're looking to learn more about assistive technology or various AAC things, we have a long list of professional development that we're offering here at Wayne RESA this fall, and there's many more things out there as well. You can look here, and if you go on Wayne RESA's website and navigate to their catalog and registration, you'll be able to find all of these courses. The ones I have listed here are all kind of tagged with special education in mind, so you could find them there, or you could just search for any of these course numbers. Some of these, like AT 101, is designed as a lunch and learn opportunity, so it's an hour virtual PD in the middle of a day that you could jump on and just kind of listen to and pick up a little bit more information. Whereas other ones, like Every Book, Every Learner, Creating an Inclusive Library for All, it would be an in-person, like half-day learning experience for you. We have so many different tools and lots of knowledge that we're eager to share and get out there across the county, so we do hope that you will join us in some of these learning opportunities, and that you'll let us know if there's other topics that you would like us to go more in depth with. If you have any questions, feel free to ask away by either emailing WATT, W-A-T-T, support @resa.net, or you can call us anytime at 734-334-1701. If you want to access these slides, again, you can follow that bit.ly link, which is http://bit.ly/4F capital H capital B R M capital U. Thank you so much for spending time with me, and I really hope that this was a valuable learning experience for you.